Well, good afternoon and welcome to Christian Concern Live. It's very good to see you if you're connecting on Facebook or on YouTube. Do write your comments and questions and get involved in the discussion as we proceed. We're going to be talking today about this new book that has been launched this week, Noah and the Nestling, a fantastic little book for young children by Mary Williamson. And we've got the author joining us, as well as another special guest as well today joining us to talk about this. So what we're going to do is just start off with playing a short trailer about this book, and then we will interview the author and talk about it. So I'll see you shortly when you watch the trailer. Thank you very much.
My name is Mary Williamson. I'm the author of Noah and the Nestling. Are you ready? Noah and the Nestling. Let's go for it. Here's Noah and his family. Noah and the Nestling is based on a true story, really, that we had the experience of saving a little baby bird one summer, myself and my family, and it was just wonderful just to see how precious that little bird was and to save its life so that it could carry on and grow up to be a bird. Noah and Mr. Wesley moved away from the nestling and watched from a distance, hoping that a mother bird or father bird would come to rescue it. Just like that, he was looking through his binoculars, yeah. Children love to learn. Children are so inquisitive and are so always ready to explore. So Noah and the Nestling is a story that takes them through that kind of journey of learning, but really importantly, they're learning about the life of an animal and taking care of that animal. It really is a message of how precious life is. What do you think the little girl is feeling here? Janie, what is she feeling? What's that expression on her face? Disappointed. Yeah. I'm hoping this book will be a tool and a resource in parents' hands, and also for anyone who works with children. So it'll be great if people can give this book as a gift to their grandchildren, their nieces and nephews, and even their schools.
Great. Well, Mary Williamson is here now, Mary, to join us and talk about this book. Hi, Mary. Great to see you.
Hello, Tim. Great to be with you.
Thanks for coming on. Tell us a bit about you, Mary. You're a mother of how many children have you got? Between what ages?
Four
children.
That's right, yes. Between the ages of 10 months and 12. Yeah.
Wow.
We're a busy household.
And what inspired you to write this book that we have here?
Well, as you've seen in the trailer, I did have that experience of actually taking in a little baby bird once with my children, and we looked after it. Not for very long. There are some guidelines legally, what you're supposed to do there. And just the opportunity to look at that life, that we had the opportunity to hold it, to love that little bird, and the experience of just feeling the power of life, and really the power of life in your hands. That was quite unforgettable, and anyone who loves animals will probably know exactly what I'm talking about there. And it wasn't too long afterwards I had the idea come to me, and God put that idea on my heart to write this story, do the illustrations, and that's generally making a long story short.
That's great. So the story is about a child called Noah who finds a tiny little chick, and doesn't really believe it's a bird because it doesn't look like a bird. It's presumably just out of its egg, and then watches the bird grow and become a bird. And then there's a message there. Just explain to us that.
Oh yes. The message, it's the message of life. It's the message of how precious life is. It's a message that no matter who you are, there's a few words in the book, in the story, that explains that kind of concept. It doesn't matter how small, how big, how insignificant, according to us, all that doesn't matter, because every life is precious, and every life deserves preserving and looking after, and really valuing. I think that's the key word. Every life is valuable.
Yeah. So the point is, it's a bird, even when it's in the egg, and like
Absolutely.
before it's come out of the egg, it's still a bird. And
Yep.
then when it comes out the egg as a little chick, which isn't really able to fly yet or anything like that, and doesn't look like a bird, it's still a bird.
It's still a bird.
And then when it finally gets all its coloured feathers and is able to fly, then it's a bird. And of course, the analogy is with human life, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That as a little embryo before we've been born, we're still a human. There's a great story in the news this week. Did you see it? About I'm not sure it's a great story, but interesting story about a child that was born, but she was originally an embryo frozen 27 years ago. And it's interesting because the media reporting it as she started life as an embryo 27 years ago, and they're saying she, and naming her and stuff, and it's like they recognize that that's a human life, in the media. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And you've done some brilliant illustrations. I don't know if the colors will come across on the screen there, but really lovely illustrations and colorful illustrations. There's the bird there. You're an artist. How did you do this?
Well, I had never considered myself an artist until this happened, and God put this on my heart and said to do the illustrations. So out of obedience, I went ahead and did it. It was back a few years ago I discovered that I could draw, and I went to my mother and said, "Mum, I can draw." And she said, "Well, yeah, I know." And I said, "Mum, you didn't tell me." She said, "I used to draw as a child." And somehow, it happens, doesn't it? As we grow up, we lose these interests and talents and things. But well, there we go. And it was really an emotional topic, for me to do these illustrations. And it's a subject that's so close to my heart that it's really a pleasure to be able to put this onto paper, to be able to express this message. And so I'm so glad you like the illustrations, and I just hope children will enjoy looking at them and just be engaged with everything that's going on those pictures.
Fantastic. Well, I think even from the color, you can tell that they're very engaging, vibrant, lovely, simple pictures that kids will immediately respond to. And you said this is a subject close to your heart, Mary. Why is it close to your heart? Can you tell us?
Absolutely. I was a young parent. I think I'd start there. I never really considered abortion. I had in me, I already had I suppose the conviction that that's the wrong way to go about it. However, I became a Christian not so long after that. And that's really where my journey started with. My heart became very much awakened to this message of life. And it's God's heart for children. It's God's heart. And children deserve preserve. I've said this already. We need to value our children. And that's got to start in the womb. And we need to also help those who are probably young parents, and or they become pregnant through other circumstances that aren't very much in the circumstances that they wouldn't have wanted.
Wouldn't have chosen. Yeah.
Wouldn't have chosen, absolutely. And we all know that kind of that's a deep topic to go into. But just there's giving that child a chance to live is a choice that nobody ends up regretting.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we've got another guest here who's got a story exactly about that. Rita-Zelie, who's here. And do, by the way, make comments and questions in the Facebook, YouTube. You're following us now live. Be love to hear from you. But Rita, hi. Thanks for joining us. Now, Rita, tell us something about your story, because you're also a mother, but obviously at a later stage in that.
I worked as a nurse at a local hospital, and I was put under huge pressure to take part in abortions. I flatly refused time and time again, but the pressure became greater, and thankfully I discovered there was SPUC who told me my rights to refuse so that I wouldn't have to. I found that really helpful.
Mm.
I've always been anti-abortion myself. A child is a child, and I found that even in my final year of training as a nurse, um, I was ordered to train the younger nurses on how to prepare patients for abortions. So
Wow.
at all points, I would use the word unborn child rather than than fetus, because a child
Yeah.
is a child,
Yeah.
whether they're born or unborn.
Mm-hmm.
I myself value my children, greatly value my children. I love them
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy their company.
And tell us
I
about
have
your children. How old are your children?
My oldest is 27. My
Right.
youngest is 13.
Right.
I've four. And
Right.
with all four children, time and time again with each of them, at least 8 to 10 times with each of them, I had midwives and hospital staff strongly try to coerce me into aborting. And
With all four
I,
children, like 8 to
with
10
all
times,
four children,
they
with
said
all four,
you really should terminate this pregnancy.
yes. They explained to me, how easy and simple they could just make the arrangements. I am so glad that I didn't. The joy I've had bringing them up. Yes, it's been really,
So
really good bringing them up.
why did they put pressure on you to abort these four children?
With my first one, my husband was unemployed at the time, and they felt for financial reasons it would be better to get rid of the child.
Really?
But
The child was healthy as far as they could tell, and they just thought you're on
perfectly
your own.
healthy.
Goodness me.
My child was perfectly healthy, nothing wrong whatsoever. And I decided to lean on, it is written, my God shall supply all my needs according to his riches and glory. I decided to just trust in him regardless. And I'm so glad I did. And
Wow.
he
So what
has
about the other children? What did they say about the other children then?
likewise with he had lost his job yet again around the time my second one was due to be born, and again they began to put huge pressure to abort, and I was
So
in
just
my
can we just be
third.
clear about this? I just want to explain to people that your husband losing your job is not a legal valid reason for aborting a child, right? It's not. But
Well,
you had these nurses.
the enormous pressure put by the medical staff, including even the scanning lady, the midwife, the emotional pressure at such a time when you're expecting a
Yeah,
baby.
yeah.
It's an absolutely awful experience.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah. And what about your other two children?
I was in my late 30s, and the staff said, "Oh, um, the risks of disabilities was very high, and better not to take a chance, get rid of them." And
Just the
they
risk. They
even
hadn't even done a test. Just the risk.
no, they hadn't, and even they saw the scans later, and the scans looked perfect. But then they wanted to do probes into the womb, to double check. And I am very much aware that if you have a probe into the womb, there is a spontaneous abortion a huge proportion of the time. And that is literally risking the life of a child to find out if the child is okay. And that's the pressure to have that done was enormous. There were many times I was contacted by the hospital and the midwife and various staff, really pressurizing me to have these tests done.
Wow. Yeah. And was that the same on your fourth child as well?
More than ever, much more than ever. Yes, there was no financial issue then. There was no issue whatsoever, but just because of my age.
Just because of your age. Wow. And now your children are well, you obviously love them and they're doing really well.
They are. When after birth, a consultant, some time after birth, when they were about 3, 4 or so, a consultant pronounced that that they had disabilities, autism, but
all 4 of them.
No, just the younger 2. However,
Right.
they were verbally written off by the consultants, and really negative things said about them. However, despite those negative things, I decided, an older lady in my church who was very good at coaching me, she told me never to say I agree or never say yes, just say I understand. So I said, I understand what she's saying. And I know in the book of Jeremiah, it says, my plans are to build you up, not tear you down, to prosper you, not to harm you. So I prayed that over the children. And by the age of 9, they had passed 2 exams each in Chinese at South Bank University.
Wow.
And one is preparing to be a scientist. The other one is preparing to be an engineer. And despite having been written off, despite all the desperate attempts by the medical staff the whole way through the pregnancies for me to have an abortion, I am so glad I didn't do it. The joy that would have been robbed from me, the happiness that would have been robbed from me, the fun times throwing snowballs, the fun times at the seaside, the fun times doing lots of different activities, even sat on the floor playing games, board games together. It would all have been robbed, everything.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. I want to bring Andrea on as well now, but Rita, tell us, you like this book, haven't you? Tell us what you're thinking about this book is.
Well, being an artist, the illustrations absolutely appeal to my heart. I love the illustrations. They're so gorgeous. But as well as that, it has got a very lovely, don't know, am I getting this very clear? It shows the stages of an unborn bird, and it shows the stages of an unborn child. Now, when I was at school, the science books showed both fetuses as well as monkeys and everything else as identical. While this book clearly makes it very clear that humans are humans, and all the way through from conception right through till they're born and until the day they die. And I love the clarity that this book provides in those simple sketches. And I think it's really important that every child in the country knows that they are important from the second they were conceived, not from the second they were born, from the second they were conceived. It's really important that they know. And I would love everybody looking at this to go and buy one of the books at least and put it in the local library and put a few in the local schools for the local schools' libraries, because every child needs to know that they're special and that they are valued from the second they were conceived.
And you've gone and done that yourself, haven't you? You've bought dozens of books, I understand, to do exactly that.
I got some to put in the local library and the local schools, because I do believe it's really important that people know. People have been lied to for far too many years by the falsehoods in the evolutionary books that are only available in the schools. It's utterly false. It's been disproven in the 1960s that the embryos of the different creatures completely vary from the human.
Evolutionary development in the womb, that's been disproven, yes, yeah.
It's been disproven years ago, and yet it's in the school books. It's a total fallacy. It's awful. And I think this brainwashing with falsehoods needs to be put a stop to it.
Amazing story. Thank you so much. Andrea, tell us what you're thinking when you hear that story.
This is the first time I'm meeting Mary and Rita on this StreamYard, and I think what I have to say is we've got two amazing mums that love their children and have fought for their children, and inspired by the story that Mary has written. And as I've been listening, I'm reminded of the Matthew chapter 6, when Jesus tells us not to worry. And this was something that I read as a little girl. I read it over and over again, several times a week. And I used to have on the back of my little red Gideon's Bible that I was given at age 11 when I went to senior school, when I went to Weymouth Grammar School, when I was given the Gideon Bible. And I put at the back, do not be anxious about anything, but do not worry. And it was Matthew 6. And if I read Matthew 6 just now, it says, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, this is Jesus, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. And this is why I remembered it. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? And that's the message of this book. You know, the story of Mary rescuing the little bird, perhaps being in circumstances very young with a baby of her own and having this precious child. And that God looked after Mary, God looked after her child. She was able to share that little bird experience, and it proves that God looks after us. And Rita's story of, how are you going to afford, we're often here, how are you going to afford for this child? How are you going to look after this baby? And why do you worry about your clothes? Jesus goes on. See how the flowers in the fields grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? And then he says, so do not worry, saying, what should we eat or what should we drink? And I think that this story, which is beautiful, and I, like Rita, I'm doing my Christmas cards and I'm popping it into the envelopes. I'm sending it to school teachers, and I think we should be encouraged to do that and get it into our local libraries and think about how to do that, because it's just so precious. My children were still small. I would love to be reading this to them. It would become a little signature story every night. But I think that the point from Matthew 6 and the point of this book is that God loves us and we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And he knows every hair on our head, and he clothes us in his beauty. And do not worry. And the whole thrust of the abortion industry today is that you're not ready. You can't do this. It's not time for this birth. Don't do it. But we have a God that's bigger than that says, your life is precious, mother, and this little life is precious. And that's the story. It's the story of rescue and beauty and life, the story of life. So well done, Mary. It's a departure in our Wilforce publishing to go into children's books. It's been a really welcome one, an exciting one. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So Mary, I love the way you called the little boy Noah. It's quite it's a very sort of telling and relevant name, isn't it? There. Tell us about your hopes and aspirations for this book. Where do you want to see it going to?
I love what Andrea is sharing. Really, I would hope that this book can reach children everywhere. It's a book that's so. The story itself, it's not getting political, it's just a story that speaks directly to the child's heart. So for all parents with young children and those with older children grandchildren, and anyone who works with children and who has children around them for whatever reason, just sharing this story with them. You don't even have to explain much. The story speaks to their heart directly.
The truth sort of speaks for itself, doesn't it? I mean, it's kind
really
of like it's true, but you explained it very well. That the truth that we are and we were, and do you know what I mean? And it's like you knit me together. You knit me together in my mother's womb. So that was me, and you're just explaining it in a different way, aren't you?
Absolutely. And, just as Andrea was sharing, Jesus told stories like this all the time. And why did he tell us stories? Because stories have this ability to go straight into the depths of our hearts. And it's so important that we start giving children the truth through stories, it's important that we begin to fill their minds with God and God's truth and his plans for life.
Fantastic.
I mean, it is wonderful. It is true because, I was filled with Matthew 6. I mean, I was older, obviously, but it was at that point, but I was entirely filled with it right through my teenage years, let's say. I used to turn to that chapter several times a week. And I think to just be instilling in our children as early as possible, as young as possible, this beautiful message that God knows everything about you from the moment, even when you were in your mummy's womb, he knows. That is so amazing. And then the little bird, and he cares about the little bird too. He cares about the little bird too. Unusually for me not to get political, but to say this, isn't it interesting, Mary? You said this. You said that there were rules around saving that little bird. Mm-hmm. When you were rescuing the little bird, there were laws. Yeah. Well, let's think about during this pandemic, the law has been so weakened around protection for our unborn children that we're now going to send 2 pills by post to women who aren't therefore being looked after properly, really, to get rid of the unborn life within their womb. So there's an irony that the law probably protects that little bird more than it's protecting the children. Just like, it's been interesting because I've been looking out at some ash trees and different trees in my runs, and I see that they are protected. And every time I run past these trees that are very old, but they are really protected by the state. And I'm thinking...
Well, Andrea, it's been said that the most dangerous place for a human being is in the mother's womb in this country, which is shocking, isn't it? And it's 200,000 abortions a year, and all of the measures, right, to save lives under COVID, which is like 60,000, right, and it's way more than double that in abortions. It's a genocide. It's like it's a huge number of people, and where are the measures there? And Andrea, just tell me, Rita just told us that about the pressure. 4 children every time, 8 to 10 times, if different nurses and scanners, you really should terminate this. Just tell us, Andrea, about that. Isn't that shocking?
Well, and it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Because it's not a culture of life. And I think there is a reality that as women get older and are pregnant older, there is this, you need to check, is the baby going to be okay? The risks with children at that point. So immediately a pressure that if the child doesn't seem to be okay by the world standards, a pressure to abort. Or if you're young, let's say, in a married type of situation, or scared, the pressure to abort. Interestingly,
these are not legal reasons. It's not a legal reason, is it?
No.
It's not a legal justification. You're old and therefore you should abort your baby. Nor is it your husband's lost his job, therefore you should abort your baby.
Or you're young and you haven't got a husband, or you're at university and you're going to wreck your life, because you won't wreck your life. I mean, this is what I want to say to women everywhere. It won't wreck your life. Giving life to life will not wreck your life. It will give you life. It will give, and this is the thing of Matthew 6. It will give you joy, and do not worry, because God's got it wrapped. God's always got it wrapped. And next week in Parliament, we are together with a number of organisations. We are helping to host a parliamentary briefing on the impact of pills by post. So I think it would be really great if anyone watching this could just take a look at the webpage on that, Care for Women it's called, and just to ask their MPs to come along and attend that briefing next week. We're going to have a lawyer and a public health consultant to talk about the present impact on that issue. But let me say as well, that's really important. So please, anyone watching, it's ever so easy to just invite your MP from that particular page. So go ahead and do that.
So christianconcern.com/care for women.
Yes, that's exactly it. But also let me say that just as I am doing, as I'm writing my Christmas cards, let's get this book into local schools. Make sure if you've got children that it's bedtime reading. Let's get this into our Sunday schools. That's a really easy one. Let's get it into the Sunday schools. Let's gift it into the Sunday schools. Let's gift this book into Sunday schools. I'm sending lots of copies wherever I can. So let's do that, because we really believe in this important message.
Fantastic. Well, it's available at CLC and other Christian bookshops, and also through Amazon, fulfilled by CLC as well. It's only £6, I think, so it's really incredible value for a full color book like this, with all the illustrations inside it, and a great message for your children or nephews, nieces, grandchildren, whatever. I'm just thinking, Andrea, about all the women. Rita was strong, right? What about all the women who weren't strong under that kind of pressure?
Well, I want to say that God loves you. God loves you. God knows you. And in a world where you come under that pressure, in a world that doesn't understand life, that doesn't teach us life, that doesn't teach this, in a world that doesn't do that, don't beat yourself up. What I'm saying, if you've made a decision to abort, God is there forgiving you. He wants to rescue you. He wants to take hold. He wants you to be free of any guilt, any secret shame. He says, I love you. I knew the child. And there is restoration, and there is hope, and there is forgiveness. And I know you. And can I say to anyone out there, if this is affecting you, then call us up. We want to be by your side, because we care about you, because we know about this pressure, and we know that there are 9.5 million women who have made this same decision. So you're not alone. It's just the reality of our culture, because culture leads to practice. If you say something's okay, if you act in a panic, if society says it's a solution, it becomes something that's really hard to fight against. So I want to say we understand, but and it's hard. But part of the problem in all of this is that we've not faced up to the reality of what it really is. So if we don't call it out for what it really is, and we never speak about what it really is, and until we do, we won't turn the culture around to say we need a culture of life, not death. Hope, shame.
I've just noticed that Trudy Wilkins on Facebook says, just ordered some of the books to give to families with young children.
Wonderful.
Great, thank you, Trudy. I've done the same. I've got copies to give to various families, church members, and so on. I'd encourage you to do that. It's great that you've got it out just in time for Christmas there. Stocking filler as well, I think, for some people. So do use it in that way. Listen, Mary, thank you so much for writing the book and doing the lovely drawings, illustrations in it, and joining us today. Rita-Zelie as well. Fantastic to have you and hear your story. Really appreciate it, and love your wonderful families, both of you, and pray that your children will grow stronger and stronger in the Lord, as well as physically. Andrea.
Yes, Tim, I know that there was a lovely animation reading of the book. I presume that's on our website or on Wilberforce Publications website, but it'd be great if people could be pointed to that, because I know people can buy the book physically, but you know what, as an alternative, there's a little reading through the screen, which is very sweet. I really loved it.
On YouTube,
So, it'd be great to advertise that too.
Great.
Well done. So proud of this book. So proud of this dream that came true for you. Wonderful. Well done.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. We've actually got another book coming out next week, completely different book. The Nation's Gospel, A History of Evangelism in Britain, from, I think, 1859 to 1900. Volume 2 of an incredible series. We're going to be talking to the author directly of that one on Monday night at 6 p.m. right here where you are today, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. Do encourage your MP to come along to that briefing next week at christiancentre.com/care4women. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, and connect with our emails, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much.